Emotional control is power. There is no greater weakness in a man than being ruled by his emotions. In a world where manipulation is often masked as empathy and outrage is mistaken for courage, emotional control is the rarest form of strength. The man who cannot govern his impulses, his anger, jealousy, pride, does not possess power. He is merely a puppet, his strings pulled by those who understand how to provoke, disarm, and steer him. This is why emotional control is not a suggestion. It is a requirement. Because when you react instantly, when you scream, flinch, beg, or chase, you hand your power to someone else. And in doing so, you become predictable. And what is predictable is vulnerable. But the man who remains calm under pressure, the man who dissects an insult rather than defending his ego, terrifies people. Why? Because he cannot be moved. His calm suggests calculation. It signals that behind the silence is a mind not just thinking but strategizing. He doesn't respond to disrespect with noise. He absorbs it, studies it, and waits. He knows that emotions are useful only when harnessed, not when worshipped. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is emotionally reactive. One person is anxious, another angry, another desperate for attention. Then you enter, still, calm, unshaken. People turn to look, not because you're loud, but because your presence feels different, heavier, more grounded. That is emotional discipline in action, and it commands unconscious respect. Even in private, when no one is watching, the dangerous mind trains itself. Anger burns cold. Sadness becomes sharp in focus. Even joy is measured, not because feeling is wrong, but because giving it full control is a liability. The world punishes emotional honesty. It rewards control. You do not become powerful by shouting louder. You become powerful by speaking only when the time is right. When your reactions are no longer reactions, but strategic, deliberate decisions. Emotional control is not the absence of feeling. It is the art of transforming feeling into fuel. It is the armor of the mind that refuses to be broken. And in a world driven by impulse, nothing is more feared or more respected. Silence and restraint are strategic weapons. In a world addicted to noise, silence is a weapon, and restraint is power. Most people are slaves to the moment they speak, to be heard, react, to be noticed, and reveal their emotions without a second thought. But the mind that terrifies it stays quiet, not out of fear, but out of control. Because the man who can hold his tongue while others rush to speak is the one holding the upper hand. When you remain silent, you gather information. When you show restraint, you remain unreadable. And that unreadability unsettles people in ways they can't explain. There's a kind of presence that fills a room without saying a word. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. It's the look that doesn't flinch, the breath that stays calm, the body that doesn't fidget when provoked. That's not passivity, it's dominance in its purest form. It says, I don't need to perform for your comfort. And the moment others can't predict your reactions, they fear what you might do next. Unpredictability creates tension, and tension is leverage. Most men are taught that expressing themselves is power, but Machiavelli knew better. He knew that words reveal intentions and reactions expose weaknesses. That's why he advised rulers to speak little and listen much. Because when you stay quiet, others reveal themselves. They overplay, they confess, they lose their balance. And you, if you've trained your silence well, become the mirror that reflects their chaos. Restraint also gives you time to observe, to think, to choose your next move with precision. In strategy, as in life, timing is everything. A delayed reaction is not hesitation, it's calculation. And that delay can make the difference between being manipulated and taking control. Let others bark. Let them spill their emotions and expose their vulnerabilities. Your job is to remain calm, detached, deliberate. Silence is not the absence of thought. It's the presence of focus. Restraint is not weakness, it's preparation. And when the moment comes to speak, to strike, or to walk away, you do so not from emotion, but from power. quiet power, the kind that shakes people without making a sound. Solitude builds strength. Most people run from solitude not because they love others so deeply, but because they fear meeting themselves. They fill their calendars with noise, their lives with constant motion, and their minds with distractions just to avoid the silence that forces them to face their inner emptiness. But the mind that terrifies the one that commands respect, without raising its voice, is not forged in crowds. It's sculpted in isolation. True power is not built in applause, it's built in the stillness that most people never dare to enter. Solitude is the crucible of clarity. It strips away every borrowed identity, every performative smile, every opinion that wasn't truly yours. When you are alone, there is no audience to impress, no validation to chase, no script to follow. There is only the raw confrontation between who you are and who you pretend to be. And while that confrontation is brutal, it is also necessary, because only in isolation can the false self be burned away and the real self begin to rise. Weak minds fear silence because silence exposes them, but strong minds demand it. While others seek company to escape themselves, the terrifying mind uses solitude as a training ground. In the dark, it sharpens thought, it reclaims emotional discipline, and it builds vision without interference. When others are partying for acceptance, it is reading, reflecting, planning. When others chase validation, it rewires itself to no longer need it. This is not loneliness, it's self-possession. A man who thrives in solitude cannot be manipulated with attention guilt or abandonment. He does not cling, he does not chase, and he never begs to belong, because he already belongs to himself. Solitude is the space where transformation happens. It is where the world's distractions die and the inner fire is fed. The longer you can sit with your own mind, the sharper, colder, and more focused it becomes. And when you return from that silence, calm, intentional, and indifferent to approval, you carry with you a presence that shakes people. Not because you ask for power, but because they can feel you no longer need them. Approval is a trap. The need to be liked is one of the most effective chains ever forged. It wraps around the mind, quietly disguised as connection, acceptance, and kindness. But underneath it lies something far more dangerous: dependence. Dependence on validation. Dependence on external affirmation to feel real, to feel worthy, to feel like you matter. And once you're hooked on that drug, the applause, the approval, the smiling nods of others, you are no longer free. You've become a performer in a theater you don't control, dancing for the comfort of the crowd while your true self is suffocated beneath the mask. The terrifying mind, however, breaks this chain. It recognizes approval for what it is: a currency of control. Society rewards obedience with praise. It offers applause for conformity. It hands out warmth for compliance. But the cost of that praise is your independence. The moment you become addicted to being understood, liked, or accepted, you give away the sharpest edge of your mind. You become tame, predictable, emotionally bendable. But the man who no longer needs approval becomes ungovernable. He doesn't chase belonging. He doesn't beg to be heard. He sees the crowd for what it is: fragile, reactive, and desperate, to keep everyone on the same emotional leash. The terrifying mind walks away from that, not because it hates people, but because it refuses to need them. This detachment is not cruelty, it is clarity. It's the ability to stand in a room full of judgment and remain unmoved. It's the power to speak truth without calculating how many people will like it. It's the strength to say no, not as defiance, but as a quiet declaration of self-respect. Most people are terrified of being misunderstood. But the terrifying mind knows that being misunderstood is a sign of authenticity. A sign that you are no longer molding yourself to fit into cages you never agreed to. Approval is a prison wrapped in compliments. Escape it, and you will discover a version of yourself that no one can tame. You will not be applauded. You will be feared. And in the world of power, that fear is far more valuable than being liked. Information is ammunition. In a society obsessed with comfort, entertainment, and instant gratification, very few people dare to confront the raw, unfiltered truth. They choose distraction over understanding, affirmation over confrontation, and safety over clarity. But the terrifying mind, the one that commands fear and influence, feeds on the very truths others run from. Because power does not come from inspiration. It comes from information. Real, ruthless, uncomfortable information. This is not the kind of knowledge found in feel-good quotes or sanitized history books. This is the knowledge buried in the margins, the betrayals, the propaganda, the manipulation tactics, the unspoken rules that shape how people think, act, and surrender. While most scroll blindly through curated distractions, the terrifying mind studies how power is actually built. It reads banned books. It studies cult psychology, propaganda mechanisms, and the structure of mass obedience, not to imitate evil, but to understand the machinery behind it. Because once you understand the truth about how people are moved by fear, by scarcity, by shame, by false hope, you no longer fall for the illusions that control them. You step outside the fog while others remain lost in it. You start seeing patterns: who benefits from belief, who shapes the narrative, who pulls the strings. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. That is where real power begins. The mind that terrifies does not chase the knowledge that is socially acceptable. It hunts for the forbidden, the ignored, the vilified. Not for rebellion, but for leverage. Every truth it absorbs becomes another layer of armor, another weapon sharpened in the dark. People fear what they don't understand, and that includes people who understand more than them. When you speak from a place of deep, forbidden knowledge, others feel it. They sense you've gone somewhere they haven't, and it unsettles them. Because deep down they know if you've read what they've avoided, you're not just thinking differently, you're playing a different game. Information, when used with strategy, becomes ammunition. And in the hands of the disciplined, it doesn't just educate. It dominates. Psychological warfare is greater than physical confrontation. Real power is rarely loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't swing wildly, and it never announces itself. Because true dominance isn't about muscle or rage. It's about perception, control, and timing. The terrifying mind doesn't rely on physical intimidation. It understands that if you can control the mind, the body follows. And that's where psychological warfare becomes the most potent weapon. Most people think conflict means confrontation, raised voices, clenched fists, aggressive posturing. But those are the tools of the unrefined. The mind that terrifies doesn't need to explode to assert power. It uses tension. It leverages silence, misdirection, and presence like a scalpel, not to destroy aimlessly, but to carve advantage with surgical precision. This kind of warfare starts in the unseen places. A pause in conversation, a word left unsaid, eye contact that doesn't flinch. These are not passive behaviors, they are calculated strikes. People expect force. But when they're met with stillness instead, with composure so deep it feels unnatural, it unsettles them. It exposes their chaos, their insecurities, their need for validation. And the terrifying mind knows when to disappear. Absence, when used strategically, can instill more fear than presence. Because when people don't know where you stand or what you're planning, they begin to spiral. Doubt creeps in. They start making mistakes. You don't need to attack them. You just need to let them unravel themselves. Psychological warfare is not cruelty for the sake of ego. It is command without chaos. It's the power to shift a room without raising your voice. It's knowing exactly when to speak and when to stay silent, when to correct and when to let someone trap themselves with their own words. The terrifying mind doesn't waste energy trying to win arguments. It wins environments. Through presence, unpredictability, and precise influence, it becomes the architect of every room it enters. This power doesn't destroy recklessly, it bends shapes and redefines what others thought was unshakable. And in the end, the one who controls perception controls reality. Detachment is strength. Attachment is the silent destroyer of clarity. Most people confuse connection with dependence, thinking that needing others is somehow noble. But the terrifying mind understands a harsh truth. The more you need someone emotionally, the more power they hold over you. True strength begins where need ends. Detachment is not about rejecting relationships or isolating yourself out of bitterness. It's about approaching everything from a place of choice, not desperation. To walk away from someone or something without flinching is a higher form of power. It means you've built yourself into someone whole, someone who is not constantly negotiating their value based on external responses. While the masses live and die by praise or rejection, the detached mind stands unmoved. It engages with others, yes, but never at the cost of its own center. And that unshakable presence disturbs people because they cannot manipulate what they cannot tether. Detachment allows you to think clearly, move strategically, and see through the noise. When others beg to be understood, you stay focused on purpose. When others chase belonging, you remain grounded in truth. You become someone who no longer needs to explain yourself to prove your worth or to earn your place because you already own it. And this doesn't make you cold. It makes you calm. It makes you deliberate. It means your alliances are chosen with precision, not out of fear of being alone. You can connect deeply, but only with those who match your standard, your clarity, your pace. The moment something no longer serves your path, you release it without drama. That's not cruelty, that's discipline. People will guilt you. They will say you're heartless, distant, arrogant. Let them. Their accusations are simply the sounds of chains, rattling chains they're still wearing, but you've broken. The terrifying mind holds no fear of being left behind, because it never clung in the first place. To detach is not to lose emotion, it's to own it, to be its master, not its slave. And in that detachment, you become untouchable, not because you reject others, but because you no longer depend on them to define who you are. Master human nature. To build a mind that terrifies you must first understand what most people refuse to face, that human beings are not as rational, noble, or self-aware as they pretend to be. Beneath the layers of politeness and political correctness lies a far more ancient engine instincts. Fear, vanity, lust, status, envy. These are not flaws of the few. They are the default operating system of the many. And if you fail to see them, you become a victim of them. But if you study them deeply, ruthlessly, without sentiment, you gain something most never will: predictive power. People are programmable, not because they're stupid, but because they crave comfort more than truth. They will believe a lie if it makes them feel safe. They will follow a false leader if it promises them identity, inclusion, or superiority. Understand this, and you no longer wonder why the masses act irrationally. You see them as systems reacting to stimuli. Systems you can read. Systems you can influence. The terrifying mind uses psychology not to heal the world, but to navigate it strategically. It studies cognitive bias, groupthink, emotional triggers. It learns what makes people submit, what makes them obey, what makes them betray their own values just to belong. Not to manipulate recklessly, but to remain unmanipulated. Because when you know what people fear, what they secretly want, and what image they're trying to protect, you can see through the words, through the masks, through the noise. And this clarity is dangerous. Not because you'll abuse it, but because you no longer fall for emotional theater. While others panic chase trends and beg for status, you move like a hunter among prey. Calm, focused, unreadable. To master human nature is not to become heartless. It is to become realistic. To see people not as ideals, but as they truly are: beautiful and brutal, noble and flawed, intelligent, yet deeply driven by emotion. And once you can hold that truth without flinching, you'll realize something powerful. Understanding people is not about trusting them. It's about positioning yourself so they can never control you. Isolation is a crucible, not a curse. Most people fear isolation because it confronts them with the one thing they've spent their whole lives avoiding themselves. In silence, there is no applause, no distractions, no audience to affirm your worth. There is only the raw reflection of who you truly are when the performance ends, and that for the average mind is unbearable. But for the terrifying mind, the mind that bends reality, commands attention, and reshapes environments, isolation is not something to escape. It's something to embrace. Because in isolation, the lies begin to die. The masks crack. The beliefs you borrowed from others disintegrate. What remains is something dangerous, a self no longer shaped by opinion or belonging. A self forged not in popularity, but in truth. Most people fear being alone because they've built an identity that only survives in public. But when you build your identity in solitude, it cannot be taken from you. It is yours. And that terrifies people. The stronger you grow in solitude, the more detached you become from the herd. You no longer need their validation, their acceptance, or their understanding. You see the emotional games they play, the status, signaling, the people-pleasing, the shallow performances, and you no longer feel compelled to join. That distance doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you clear. And clarity comes at a price. You will lose friendships based on convenience. You will walk away from rooms that no longer deserve your presence. You will stop chasing people who only noticed you when you shrank to fit their comfort zone. And in that process, you will become something rare, independent of the system, untamed by approval, unmoved by noise. Isolation is not loneliness. It is the crucible where the self is stripped, refined, and rebuilt in fire. Most avoid it. But the ones who endure it, who grow in it, emerge with a presence that doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. Quietly, relentlessly, unapologetically. Let others fear solitude. You use it as your weapon, because the man who thrives in silence is the man no one can shake because he built his strength where others refuse to look. Reputation is a tool. Power doesn't always need to speak. It can whisper and still shake the ground. That's the role of reputation, not as vanity, but as a strategic force. In a world that worships visibility, the terrifying mind plays a different game. It knows that mystery creates tension, and tension creates influence. While others overshare, overexpose, and try to prove their worth through constant noise, the disciplined mind remains deliberate, precise, and unreadable. And it is this very silence that makes people talk. Reputation is not about being liked. It's about being remembered. It's about cultivating a presence so intentional, so unnerving that even when you're not in the room, your name bends the conversation. It's the aura of unpredictability, the trace of danger, the weight of silence that makes others hesitate before they speak your name. Not because you've threatened them, but because they can't decode you. And in a world addicted to predictability, that alone is terrifying. The terrifying mind never flaunts its strength. It doesn't need to. A glance, a word, an intentional absence. These small gestures speak louder than 1,000 declarations. Your reputation should do the heavy lifting for you. Let others talk too much, reveal too much, weaken themselves in their thirst to be seen. You move in shadows. Be felt, not flaunted. Control how much people know. Reveal nothing that doesn't serve a purpose. When people know too little, they stay alert. That alertness breeds caution, and caution is disguised fear. Fear of what you might do. Fear of what you might know. Fear of who you really are beneath the surface. Reputation is your psychological armor. Guard it with precision. Build it with action, silence, and consistency. Don't rush to correct every misperception. Let people believe what they want. Their assumptions are your camouflage. Their gossip is your fog. And in that fog, you move unseen, shaping outcomes while they react blindly. In the realm of power, the loud are easy to target. The mysterious are impossible to corner. Be the one they whisper about but never fully understand, because the reputation that inspires curiosity and fear, that's not just influence, that's control. Build a mind that leads, not pleads. In today's world, strength isn't about how loud you are, it's about how centered you remain when everyone else is losing themselves. The most powerful people don't seek attention, approval, or applause. They seek clarity, discipline, and psychological control. If there's one message to take from this philosophy, it's this: you don't need to be liked to be respected. You need to master yourself. We live in a culture that rewards emotional overexposure, where people confuse expression with strength. But real strength is restraint. It's the ability to sit in silence without needing validation. It's walking away without announcing it. It's making moves without explaining them. The man or woman who can observe without reacting, who can think deeply without broadcasting every thought, will always hold an advantage. Another vital truth: approval is a drug. Once you stop needing it, you become unpredictable, and that's when people begin to take you seriously. Detach not from humanity, but from the belief that you must perform for it. Build your thoughts in solitude. Train your emotions to serve you, not sabotage you. And never fear being misunderstood. Fear only being molded by people who don't understand your value. In real life, this means setting boundaries without guilt. It means choosing solitude over shallow company. It means learning how to study people, not to manipulate, but to protect your peace and anticipate power dynamics. The strong mind is rare because it refuses to follow the emotional rhythm of the crowd. Stop trying to fit in. Start becoming someone worth following. Not because you shouted to be heard, but because you were silent long enough to see what others couldn't.